Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of eDiscovery After Hours. Today we talked to Rachel McAdams from A&L Goodbody out of Dublin. Rachel has been one of the kindest, most generous people with her time as I've transitioned into this industry. And I was very grateful to spend time with her in a more casual setting. So we get to talk about what she was doing before she got into eDiscovery, getting a PhD in something that has nothing to do with her day job. We talk about some of her hobbies. And she's just, I think, one of the kindest, warmest people. So I'm grateful that you tuned in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Today's sponsor is Discovery Master. So if you are involved with relativity instances hosted by multiple channel partners on-prem in the cloud, and you want one place to see reporting for all of them, check out www.discoverymaster.co. Thanks.
Quick time!
You don't know how to drink, your whole generation.
Drinks on the house.
Yes, sir.
No, wait a second. Drinks are 50% off.
Right.
No, wait a second. Double the price of everything.
And I work only 16 hours a day.
A union man only works 8 hours a day.
I belong to 2 unions.
And now, eDiscovery After Hours with your host, Ryan Short.
Okay. Rachel McAdams, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Oh, you're very welcome. I am very good, thank you.
Awesome.
Very good.
Cheers. What are we drinking today?
Cheers. So I just have some very basic black tea from the Aldi supermarket in Dublin. I love tea. I drink literally gallons of it every day. If there's not a cup of tea in my hand, I'm just off to make one. But I'm not fussy about it as well. So most people who drink a lot of tea are a bit fussy and they have their favorite brand, but I am very basic. I buy the cheapest tea bags that I can find and I just churn through them.
Yeah.
So it's not fancy, but it's what gets you through the day.
So a couple of things. Number one, we're actually like lying to our audience because this is called eDiscovery After Hours, trying to replicate like, hey, we're at a trade show and we're at a bar afterwards getting to know each other. It's 11 a.m. where I am in Indianapolis, probably 3 in the afternoon where you are?
4 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just what we have to do in our transoceanic virtual networking in this COVID world. So anyway, kudos. I thought maybe because it's 11 a.m. my time that you would suggest like a Bloody Mary or, something to that effect. But it was so charming to an American hearing your lovely accent suggest tea. I was like, yes, that is exactly what I want.
Well, technically I'm on the clock as well. So I am not sure that my boss would love it if he tuned into this and found out that I was drinking Bloody Marys at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're protecting us both here. Yeah,
I love it. That's very well played. So it's really good to be with you in this setting. You and I have, I guess, known each other for like 8 or 9 months at this point, and we've always had lovely conversations. And one of the things that I've always wanted to ask you is how in the world, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now, how in the world somebody with a master's degree in mathematics and a PhD in plasma physics, first of all, I need you to explain to me what plasma physics is. And secondly, how in the world did you end up in eDiscovery?
That is a question I get asked an awful lot. People are very interested in my path to eDiscovery. So first of all, plasma physics. The work that I did, or the research, was to help build a nuclear fusion power plant on Earth. And it's basically recreating the sun in a metal bucket in a lab somewhere. So we get some hydrogen, we make it really hot, we try to hold it inside. It's not exactly a bucket, it's a metal donut. We try and hold it inside this donut-shaped reactor, and we force it to burn like the sun. And the reason we do that is because it's a great source, if you can get it to work, a great source of electricity. So you can use the heat from our sun in a bucket to create steam, which then you can use to create electricity. So it's an alternate power source, and it kind of scares people because it's called nuclear fusion, but it's a really clean, renewable source of energy. And there's a big community of scientists across the world who are trying to get this nuclear fusion to actually be efficient and powerful enough to start working as actual power plants and generating electricity for people. It's a bit of a long-running project. They're building a huge reactor in the south of France at the moment, which is going to be the next sort of big test bed for doing this, and is supposed to sort of move us closer to demonstrating that it actually could be a reality. But there's a way to go yet. So the work that I did was I did a lot of sort of equations on boards, the typical blackboards and covered in chalk and doing equations and things like that.
Yeah, you lived a beautiful mind, yeah.
Yeah, and I did a lot of computer simulations, which was much less glamorous. And the thing about a PhD is you don't have to be smart, you just have to persevere. You just have to keep going. A lot of people think that it means you're really clever. It really doesn't. It just means that you've had enough grit to make it to the end. It's a very trying process. And when you come out the other side, you either loved it and you want to keep going, or, you decide that maybe you want to do something else. And I decided I wanted to do something else. I had moved to Belfast to live with my partner who was there at the time. I was looking for a job. It's very hard when you come out of academia to find something you think you'd be good at that isn't what you were doing in academia. So I was looking around and I was approached by a recruiter who thought I had a good profile to do e-discovery work. And one of his clients was one of the big four. So I went in for an interview with them, had no idea what e-discovery was, but it sort of piqued my interest because I'd never heard of it before. When you started Googling it, all this information comes up, and there was all this cool stuff about, digital forensics and finding needles in haystacks and just dealing with these huge data volumes and how you approach that. So it was super interesting. I wasn't doing anything else, so I decided to have a go. And here I am today. So really it was by luck and by chance, and, because I had the right skill set, I think, to be good at a lot of the technical side, it was a good fit, but also because I'd had a lot of experience communicating complex ideas to people, and explaining complicated problems and how to solve them. It was also a good fit that way because I'd had the experience of having to do that under pressure as well. Well,
yeah, you just talked about putting the sun in a metal donut, so I can see the through line here.
Yeah, so it's something that people find interesting. I think it's a pretty neat segue between the two. I actually have some former colleagues who all came from a similar background as me, and they all sort of found the same, that it was a good fit for them because they'd had the skills from their previous academic life to sort of slot right in and hit the ground running.
That's really cool. That is a crazy pivot. So you start the conversation by talking about like nuclear energy, and then you're drawing like on a board, right? So there's a big disconnect, I think, from the mental map of what people assume you were doing, right? It's like dangerous work in an underground bunker, and you're like, no, I'm in a classroom, like with a marker board, right?
Yeah, it's not particularly glamorous, but someone has to do it.
Yeah, indeed. So you relayed at some point that you moved to Belfast. Where are you from originally?
So I was born in Oxfordshire, but a lot of my family is from Northern Ireland. And just by coincidence, my partner was at the University of Queen's in Belfast. So when I moved back there, it was a bit like, I was moving closer to most of my family, except my parents. I was moving further away from them, which was actually quite nice because I was very familiar with Belfast and with Northern Ireland anyway. And now I live in Dublin, and my parents are back in Northern Ireland, enjoying their retirement.
Yeah.
So I'm closer to them than I think probably since I have been since I left school, which is nice. And my sister also lives in Dublin, so it's nice to be back so close to all of them.
Yeah, it's funny that you're so close to all of them, but probably more unable to see them now that you're...
That's true. Yeah, my sister lives on the other side of Dublin, and it's a bit of a gauntlet to run to get across Dublin to see her when we try.
For those who may not be aware, as we record this, Dublin is in like what feels like its 45th round of complete lockdown.
Yep. So we can't go more than 5 kilometers from our house to exercise, or we're not supposed to be in people's houses or even meeting people outside. Yeah. So there's quite a lot of restrictions on us at present, which are due to continue for some time. But the weather is getting better and the sky is getting brighter, and everyone's a bit fed up. But as the weather changes, you find reasons to be cheerful and keep going. So, and St. Patrick's Day is cancelled, so everyone's very sad about that.
Well, the Catholic in me it's very sad when you say it's canceled. Maybe the parades are canceled.
The spirit lives on.
The spirit lives on, yeah. So speaking of being Catholic, you were born in England, right? Oxfordshire, you said? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then your family was in Belfast. Did you grow up in Northern Ireland?
No, I grew up in England, but I'd be over a good amount to see my grandparents and my uncles and aunts and my family on both sides.
Yeah. So one of my kind of earliest memories of world events, right, was the peace accord that took place in the late 90s, between the heavily, again, for those who aren't aware, like the heavily Protestant Northern Ireland versus the predominantly Catholic, what people think of as Ireland, right? So it's an island split into 2 countries. Did that impact your family much at all? Like, were you aware of this conflict growing up, or did it feel like this just kind of thing that was out there affecting adults because you're a blissful child?
A bit of both. A lot of it would have gone over my head. And I would say, my family weren't particularly, forthcoming about some of it, didn't really want to talk about it. Yeah. And I only remember sort of vague things about being, we used to take the car across on the ferry, and our car had Northern Irish registration plates, which are different from UK plates in general. So we'd always get stopped, and the police would be looking under the car to see if we were going to bomb anything, or you'd be maybe driving around the countryside at night and they'd hit a checkpoint or something. But it was really something that went over my head a lot of the time. Although I do remember my parents, when they got married, the place where they were originally due to have their reception was bombed just before, so they had to switch. But it was always sort of in a context of, haha, that's a funny story.
The gallows humor kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't really sink in. But since I've moved here, you get completely different perspective on it, in both the North and the South. So I'm a lot more aware now, and I don't think it was that I didn't want to be aware. It's really not talked about in England at all. It's not taught in schools. Most people in England know absolutely nothing about it. And, without wanting to get too political, the implications of Brexit on Ireland and Northern Ireland, I think were just completely ignored by a lot of the English, just because they didn't realize how much of an impact it would have, or how, maybe not fragile, but how fragile the ecosystem could be in Ireland. So absolutely. But I'm by no means an expert, and a lot of my colleagues here in Dublin would have much more informed views on it than I would. So I won't say any more in case I get called out for saying something I shouldn't. Although I don't understand.
Aside from being a bit of a political junkie myself, I was more attuned to that whole debate because my family, my name is English, short is English, but I'm actually predominantly Irish, and most of my family that remains in Ireland is up in County Donegal, which abuts Northern Ireland. And so, they have friends there and family there, and they travel to and from for work. And so it was interesting hearing how that whole thing played out and affected, the people who it was purporting to help. So we'll see, I guess, in due time how it all plays out. But it's kind of crazy. So talk to me about, right, you're in Dublin now, right? What do you do outside the office, outside of eDiscovery? What are your pre-COVID, perhaps, when you were able to get out and do things, right? How do you blow off steam? Or what are some of the things you like to do?
Well, that's a really good question, because when I first moved to Dublin, I didn't know what to do with myself. In the job I had in Belfast, I had a very long commute and I traveled a lot for work, and I didn't actually have an awful lot of time outside the office to do anything, which sounds terrible. It sounds terrible in retrospect. But I spent a lot of the time on the bus or on a train or on a plane going somewhere or coming back, or getting up at 3 a.m. to get a taxi to the airport.
You're really selling the glamour of this industry very well.
Yeah, it's hard to express just how glamorous you feel on a bus from Belfast to Dublin Airport at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to Relativity Fest, and you just think, this is worth it. I could be in bed. So I didn't know what to do with myself. And since then, I have done a few things, which is really nice. Just taking time for myself. So pre-COVID, I used to go to the cinema every week to watch films. It's just kind of like a little nice quiet time for Rachel. In the evening when there's no one else there, which is my favorite. I also took up power boating.
What does that mean, power boating?
Just driving a power boat around, just sort of...
Look at you, fancy.
Yeah, just sort of tootling around Dublin Bay. So I was learning how to powerboat. I'm also a big reader. So people won't be able to see on the podcast, but behind me in the video, I have heaps of bookcases full of books. So I've had a lot more time to look at those. And we actually bought a flat last year and moved in, and I was able to take all my books out of the boxes that they'd been stored in for about 8 years, and actually put them out onto bookshelves, which has been really, really nice.
It's the best and worst part of moving, I found, right? When you have all these boxes of books, which are the heaviest, most horrible things to move. But then when they're unpacked, it's the thing that most makes your new place feel like home, at least for bookworms like me and perhaps you. So you mentioned cinemas and books. What are the types of films that you enjoy or gravitate to? And then the same thing with books.
So with films, when I used to go to cinema, I just watched whatever was on, to be honest. I don't think I'm that fussy. And I had one of those passes, so you could go every week, and you sort of paid an amount per month and you could go in a limited number of times. So I just go and watch all these really random like action movies and things that I would never have consciously paid to go and see. Like I went to see the one about Godzilla last year. I was like, I never would have paid to go to see this, but it was actually kind of good fun just to go and watch something stupid for a while. On the book side, I'm pretty big into sort of fantasy and science fiction, really stereotypical geeky stuff. And I also play video games, and I like those kind of video games as well. Not sort of like war shooty ones, but you know, the really long RPG ones where you're, going through all these quests and stuff. So I kind of have similar tastes in books and video games as well. So
would Lord of the Rings fall into this umbrella of things that you particularly enjoy? I find that people are very, very passionately like, these are the best literature ever written, or it's the most overrated thing and people should be reading this instead.
It's so funny you say that, because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Ever since I was a little girl and I read the books and I absolutely loved them. So big fan. I actually have a Lord of the Rings collection of memorabilia, not solely for the films, but but sort of other sort of special edition books and things like that, which I keep on a special shelf, and which also recently got unpacked from a cardboard box. And I have sort of the vision one day that, you know, in the future it'll be worth millions. I'm sure it won't be, but I have these bits and bobs, and because I lived near Oxford, where Tolkien lived and worked, you know, I used to get to go to exhibitions, and once I had a foray into Oxford to get a book signed by one of the actors from the films, which is in my collection. So yeah, this also recently came out at work because we had to, for our Christmas party, we had to submit a fact about ourselves that no one knew, and people were trying to guess. And my fact was that I have this big Lord of the Rings collection. So everyone knows now. My secret.
Your secret is now being broadcast globally to the whole. It's not just within your firm now; it's the whole.
I know. No one say anything.
No. It's just our secret, right? That's good. One of the things that I'm always curious about, right? So not only am I an American, which with all of the positive and negative stereotypes that embodies, but I'm from like the most stereotypical, it's called flyover states, right? Like when people, you know, from abroad come to spend time in the States, they usually don't make a stop in Indianapolis, Indiana, unless it's for the race in May. And it's very much like, I love it here. And this is where I've lived most of my life. But there's something to be said for the times that I've been in Europe, all of the cultural diversity that is available at your fingertips, right? Because in the States, you know, that would be as if, right, Illinois and Indiana and Ohio all had different languages and different cuisines and different forms of religious practice, and all of the, you know, just the diversity in the best sense of the word, right? That comes along with what's been a checkered and largely bloody past up until the last 100 years or so. Were you either growing up or now kind of conscious of all of this diversity within an arm's reach? Did you take advantage of it? Did you like to travel and learn new languages and all these things? Or are you kind of more of a homebody who likes to, you know, play the games and read the books and stay, you know, be in your comfortable little kind of environs?
Yeah, I was actually lucky enough to spend a year studying in France. So I lived in Paris for a year and studied at the university in Paris. And I studied maths, but in French, which was actually easier than it sounds because maths is all symbols. So I didn't have to say very much, which was good. I think
technically it's Arabic, so you covered a lot of bases.
And my mum is or was a French and Spanish teacher. So we would travel a lot to France when I was young. And I've traveled over a good bit of Europe. I find in recent years I've become more of a homebody in that if I want to go on holiday, I might just go somewhere in Ireland or, you know, stay at home for a while and then go on a really big holiday. But I've been to a lot of amazing places in Europe, and I always think it's an amazing holiday destination wherever you go. And I also spent how many months? 2-3 months in Kiev in Ukraine.
Really?
When I was at university. It was meant to be sort of a student exchange, and we were meant to be doing jobs. And I was meant to be working for the university, proofreading this translation of a book. But the book was about 50 pages long, and there were 3 of us doing it. So there wasn't a huge amount of work to actually be done. So I worked about 3 mornings and spent the rest of the time wandering around Kiev and sort of trying to not get too lost. And that's one of the more unusual places I've been. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm aware of it, and I do love traveling in Europe and seeing all the different places. As you said, there's such a huge diversity of places to see. But as I said, you know, I don't know if maybe I'm getting old, but I do love traveling just even within Ireland. There's so much of Ireland I haven't seen, I haven't been to, and it's so beautiful. I don't think I'd get tired of Ireland.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. In next time, maybe for like the 50th episode of the show or something, we can do like a special broadcast from Galway, which is one of my favorite places on earth.
I haven't been. My boss is from Galway, so I'm sure it's lovely.
Oh, it's incredible. Well,
actually,
oh no, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, actually, pre-COVID, I had a big trip planned to Japan, which has been unfortunately put back until I'm not sure when.
Yeah.
But Japan was sort of the next big holiday, and we were going to go to the place where you can see the snow monkeys, and they're just sort of these monkeys that frolic around on the side of this mountain. And when it's snowy, they get into the hot spring pools to warm up. And there's a hotel next door. And more like a B&B than a hotel.
Yeah.
But if you stay in the hotel next door, you can go into their sort of private hot spring. And sometimes the monkeys come over and get in there with you. So I was desperate to have a hot spring bath with these monkeys.
Oh, man. Well, you'll have to send me a link to this whole experience. We'll put it in the show notes, because everybody at this point has stopped paying attention to this episode, and they've paused it, and they're over
to Google snow
Googling
monkeys.
Japanese snow monkeys and hot springs. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big trip, and everything in the trip was planned around me getting in this hot spring pool with some monkeys. But fingers crossed, maybe next year.
Yeah, that's quite a bucket list item.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the way we typically wrap up the show, and I'm realizing now that we didn't do any prep, and so you can say pass if you wish, but I always ask the guest, is there anything about the industry, about e-discovery, that's been on your mind lately, something that you're thinking about or reading about or implementing that you're excited about? So I'll just kind of push it over to you to see if there's anything that you would like to share with our wonderful community of listeners here.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the thing that's special about our industry in general is just the collegiate nature of it. And the more people that I get to know in the industry, the more that strikes me. We have so many organizations trying to bring people together. We have so many ways of getting information, getting training, of connecting with people. It's really special. And that's always been something that has been really lovely to be a part of. And it's something that when, things are happening, I'm always happy to direct my colleagues and just, tell them, take all the advantage you can out of this, because people are out there trying to help and trying to help you solve problems. And I'm always surprised where I might say in some sort of setting, oh, we've got this problem or that problem. And someone else will say, yeah, we've got that problem too. And here's how we've addressed it. It's not, people aren't hiding solutions from their colleagues. Everyone's working together to try and make the industry better. Yeah. And, when you're working on a discovery or something, sometimes you almost have more in common with the e-discovery people on the other side than you do with your lawyers. And you can get so many problems fixed just by saying, look, let me talk to the e-discovery person on the other side. Yeah. I know them, or I've worked with them before. And there's so many connections to just get things solved more easily when we're working as a community. I think some of the exciting things happening in the industry is, I think it seems to sort of just keep happening, but there's so much momentum around things like changing the way that we review documents. I know, every few months someone comes along and says, linear review is dead, and then everyone carries on with their linear reviews. I think just the technology for doing more smarter, better, more efficient reviews is just getting better and better. And I think there's getting more acceptance of it among the non-technical lawyers and the people who are actually at the coalface of doing the review. And I see that in our own firm, and just the acceptance of the technology and the way people are talking about it. I think that's really exciting. I think it's been going on for a long time, but it's sort of like a like a stone rolling down a mountain.
Yeah.
It's getting faster and faster as it's becoming unavoidable for people. And there's a lot more innovation in terms of how we use the technology that we have and make it maybe fit for other purposes, for other use cases. And again, that's something that we are trying to do in my firm, and just make sure that we're using all the technology to the fullest potential.
I love it. I'm familiar with kind of there's a term that was probably maybe 15 or 20 years old now, co-opetition, right? Where on the services side, it's like, hey, the people that you're competing against for a project, you're also referring business to, and they're your vendor in other areas, right? And so it's kind of like, frenemies, I guess would be another term for it. So it's interesting to hear you talk about kind of the similar dynamics on the law firm side as well. And, with respect to the cultural change, right, that's happening with respect to technology, it's like that old adage, change happens slowly until it happens quickly, right? Like people think about like, this person or that person as an overnight success. And it's like, no, they've probably been at it for about a decade, and it's just all at once the stars aligned and you became aware of them and it lined up. So, well, Rachel, this has been absolutely wonderful. And I would like to commend myself for not asking you what it's like to share a name with Rachel McAdams, which I was tempted to do and thought that might be too corny. So we'll just leave that where it is. But this was really lovely. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All righty.